is Ms. Karina Lipsman, Director of the Government Relations for the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. And she leads the VOC engagement in the U.S. federal and state policymakers, embassy, and advocacy initiatives with the human rights allies in captive nations' constituencies. Please welcome Ms. Lipsman.
Thank you to the advisory board for the invitation for us to speak, and thank you to all of you for being here today on this very special day. My name is Karina Lipsman. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit based here in Washington, D.C. And I'm truly honored to stand here before you as not only an advocate for human rights, but a staunch opponent of totalitarianism in all its forms, but as someone who has experienced the wickedness of communism firsthand. I was born and raised in Soviet Union. I have experienced what it's like to feel oppression, what it's like to feel that you don't belong, what it's like to feel fear, and being taught the propaganda, and the constant state of fearing what your neighbors would do if you practiced religion, if you said the wrong thing. So as I remember feeling gratitude when I was sworn in as a naturalized citizen of the United States, something that I knew that I was fortunate to have that opportunity that many around the world can only dream of, because this is the greatest country in the entire world. The voices of millions of victims to this tarnished ideology must never be forgotten. And you here right now are a testament to that unyielding commitment in Vietnam and everywhere. Despite Vietnam's rapid economic growth and its role as a production and trade ally for our country, make no mistake, it remains governed by authoritarian one-party state. The Communist Party holds absolute control over the government, social institutions, and media within the country. Far too long, people of Vietnam have endured the stifling grip of a single-party communist regime that has systemically suppressed dissident and curtailed basic freedoms. Unfortunately, as the country opens more to tourism, the government has continued its crackdown on freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. No doubt you are aware of a leaked Politburo document titled Directive 24 from last year. The document laid out plans to increase media censorship and surveillance and squash civil society like those gathered here today. Make no mistake, don't let the Louis Vuittons and the Apple stores fool you. Vietnam is a closed, repressive, communist country. You are here today as a reminder that the fight for democracy is not confined to any one nation or person, but it is a universal struggle that unites us all in common humanity. The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation stands with the people of Vietnam in their pursuit of democracy and justice. And I would be remiss if I did not invite you all to come visit the museum, which is off McPherson Square, 2 blocks from the White House. Thank you so much.
Next we have Ms. Anh Tu Vong. She's the Manager of Research and Advocacy for the PIN Barley Freedom to Right Center, leading PIN America's work on Southeast Asia.
Thank you so much for having us here today. We're grateful for the organizers for this event. This statement is delivered on behalf of PIN America, freedom of expression and human rights in the U.S. and around the world. The Vietnamese government systematically violates individuals' rights to freely express opinions, access information, and exercise their cultural rights. In the past 5 years, our research has documented an increasing number of jailed writers in Vietnam. In 2019, we documented 10 Vietnamese imprisoned writers. By 2023, the number had surged to 19, putting Vietnam third globally in imprisoning writers. These numbers are in addition to the 150 journalists and human rights defenders that are imprisoned in Vietnam. One of these imprisoned writers includes this year's Barbie Freedom to Write honoree, prominent activist and writer Nam Dong Jang, who has been unjustly sentenced to 9 years in prison and charged with anti-state propaganda for her writing. A significant subset of those detained are online commentators like Jang, who expresses views on topics such as human rights, democracy, corruption, and other issues. The Vietnamese authorities have continued to arrest, charge, and imprison writers and other dissidents' voices for making critical statements against the government, under the guise of violating various legislations such as the 2015 Penal Code, cybersecurity law, and decrees. These cases are often accompanied by violations of due process and fair trial rights, and have undermined access to justice. The Vietnamese government imposes lengthy prison sentences and denies inmates of adequate medical treatment, as exemplified by the case of Nam Dong Jang. Authorities further intimidate and silence writers and artists through travel bans, equipment confiscation, and detention based on artistic work. Traditional avenues of expression, including press, television, radio, and other publications, are government controlled, making social media platforms like Facebook important spaces for expression. The Vietnamese laws that require global data storage and data handover jeopardizes writers' free expression by expanding the state's capacity for surveillance and censorship online. Dissenting voices face harassment by pro-government digital militias Force 47 and E47, known for doxing and mass reporting on platforms like Facebook and YouTube. Upholding free expression and human rights in Vietnam is imperative for shaping a future rooted in freedom, dignity, and equality, with writers, journalists, artists, and creatives serving as essential catalysts for imagining a better world and fostering solidarity across communities. That is why today we urge the U.S. government to urge the Vietnamese government to stop persecuting writers, journalists, artists, and activists like Nam Dong Jang for exercising their free expression, release them from prison, and unconditionally drop all charges. Pressure authorities to provide access to legal counsel and medical care pending their release. And lastly, pass the Vietnam Human Rights Act, H.R. 3172, in the House of Representatives, and introduce and pass the Senate again. Thank you so much.
Very special guest, the Honorable Congressman Chris Smith. He represents the New Jersey Congressional District, a champion of global human rights. Congressman Smith is a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He is the author of the Vietnam Human Rights Act, which has been passed 3 times in the House.
This is so important that we remember and celebrate the Vietnam Human Rights Day, the 30th anniversary, which is a tremendous milestone, especially in the face of what is happening on the ground in Vietnam as we meet. As was just mentioned, I introduced the Vietnam Human Rights Act repeatedly. It's passed the House 3 separate times, and the 4th time we passed it as an amendment. Each and every time it got over to the Senate, and they put a hold on it, and they defeated it. We have tried to get the administration to support it this year, and they are not in favor of it. And I think that's very, very troubling, especially since they're playing some kind of, in the old days they used to call it the China card, remember that? Now they're playing this Vietnam card, somehow as if Vietnam is a buffer or some kind of counterweight to the People's Republic of China. Just for the sake of argument, I do chair the China Commission. It's bicameral, includes matter of fact, Pierre Costas, our chief of staff, there. And we have hearings, and we focus on the human rights abuses being committed daily by the Chinese Communist Party. But unfortunately, the same thing is happening by the Vietnamese Communist Party. They have an awful record of religious persecution. We have argued repeatedly that the country in particular concerned designation needs to be reestablished and reimposed on Vietnam, and the administration will not do it. I remember when it did happen. We had CPC status, because of pervasive violations of religious freedom. I traveled there, I met with pastors, I met with Venerable Taekwondo, and many, many others, all of whom said how bad it was then. Well, the Bush administration at the time took the view that, okay, if we get a bilateral trade agreement, they've made all of these, quote, deliverables when it comes to human rights, let's just lift it and see what happens. Well, we lifted it, never went back, and they've done nothing. Matter of fact, the day when the bilateral trade agreement was agreed to, the day, the Foreign Ministry put out a statement saying there's no linkage to human rights. That's a matter of sovereignty on our part, and you don't tell us what to do. Well, these are universally recognized human rights. We need to speak out. We need to speak out strongly. I'm planning a hearing in June on Vietnamese human rights abuses. It'll be, I think, a very good hearing. We're trying to get our bill out of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. I'm happy to say it's a bipartisan bill. Zoe Lofgren, Michelle Steele, and Lou Couer are all co-sponsors. We all collectively, as you know, are co-chairs of the Vietnam caucus. We are trying very hard to make sure that, especially in this latter part of this Congress, we get this bill on the floor and we set up, hopefully, for the Senate, maybe this time, to agree. Thank you for all of your great work. Dr. Tom was also here. Back in when the comprehensive plan of action was and Clinton was looking to get rid of it. He said, that's it, we're going to close it down. There were still 40,000 people that were in places like High Island, in Hong Kong, and elsewhere. So I chaired 4 hearings and said, of those 40,000 people, how many are true refugees? Because they had been all told that they're economic migrants, they're not true refugees. So I had 4 hearings. And we proved, and Dr. Tom proved beyond any reasonable doubt, that they had missed true refugees by the thousands, that they need to be re-interviewed to ensure that true refugees, well-founded fear of persecution, they could find safe haven in the United States. So I offered an amendment on the floor, bitterly contested by a number of people, including David Opie and others, who was then chairman of the Appropriations Committee. They said, oh, they got repatriation monitors. Anybody who was sent back has this repatriation monitor who comes and checks out to see how it's going. So I did a hearing on that, and I had him testify. And frankly, he said, I asked him directly, what happens when the interview is done with the person who was forcibly repatriated? And I said, and who is with that person, that repatriation monitor? He said, the secret police. I said, who in their right mind is going to say, I'm suffering negative consequences, having been forcibly sent back? When you've got the secret police standing right there, and when the repatriation monitor leaves, there were about 7 of them at the time in the whole country, you have hell to pay for that. Re-education zones, all of it was just awful. And I did an amendment, and it led to the establishment of Rover, and 20,000 of the 40,000 were re-interviewed and brought to the United States as refugees here in this country. So, we've got to fight this stuff. We've got to fight the argumentation that is made all the time. It's being made by this administration, and I find it appalling. I'm tired of people looking at human rights like it's an asterisk on the paper. Oh yeah, human rights, everybody talks about that now. And then they do a little cursory conversation about it, and there's nothing linked to trade, or in the case of country in particular concern, if that they get the CPC designation, we can sanction them. And we haven't sanctioned them. I remember John, what was his last name, our ambassador at large at the time of Bush, he met my office and said, look at all these deliverables that we have in Vietnam and religious freedom. I said, well, wait till they do them and then give them the trade agreement. No, we'll get it all. We got none of it. So again, if you're going to be naive and just close your eyes, who suffers? The people of Vietnam suffer. They were great people. We need to stand in solidarity with them. And again, we're doing a hearing on human rights abuses in Vietnam in June. And they're all welcome. And we're going to do everything we can to shine a bright light and expose terrible misdeeds being committed every day by the Vietnamese Communist Party, just like in China. Thank you.
In gratitude for your unwavering support of the Vietnam Human Rights Day, May 11th, we have a plaque for you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Excuse me, sir.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is another longtime supporter, Mr. Charles Goolsbee, Director of the Broadcasting Board of Governor, Director of the Office Editorial, U.S. Agent Global Media.
Voice of America is the largest U.S. radio, television, internet, social media, 48 languages. Established in 1943, Vietnamese is one of the VOA's oldest language services. Provides 2.5 hours of television programming. Service being a popular YouTube channel in the country with over 1.2 billion views, 1.6 million subscribers. On Facebook, VOA Vietnamese has 3.5 million followers. Many Vietnamese outside of the website. Service provides the Vietnamese audience with accurate balance news and more for the Communist Party, strictly all media. VOA was chartered by Congress for services, reliable and coordinated with accurate information. It also presents a comprehensive and balanced picture of significant American institutions, gives the audience an understanding of U.S. government actions and policies, and promotes responsible discussion of opinion policy. One way VOA presents the U.S. policies is daily editorials written for radio and broadcast, video spots, and over the internet, produced by my colleagues and myself at the U.S. Agency for Global Media's Office of Editorials. These editorials are clearly identified and as such to distinguish the newsroom. Each introduced with a declaration of editorial reflecting the United States government. With an ever-growing global audience, we work diligently to fill a vital role in U.S. public diplomacy. During the past year, our editorials have focused on a number of issues in U.S.-Vietnam relations. Human rights has been a major topic. For example, an editorial released for broadcast by VOA Services in September of last year entitled Historic Engagement with Vietnam, President Joe Biden said that human rights in Vietnam is a priority for my administration and the American people. Later that month, another prominent environmental activist sentenced in Vietnam was released by VOA Services. April 9th of this year, crackdown on ethnic and religious freedom advocates in Vietnam.
This editorial told the tragic story of numerous Christian and Buddhist clergy and believers sentenced to prison for practicing their faith. The editorial called on behalf of the United States government for their release. And Vietnam Human Rights Day 2024 was released on May 9th, or used by the services on May 11th. Gives an overview of human rights abuses in Vietnam and calls on Vietnamese authorities to release all prisoners of conscience and respect the basic human rights of the Vietnamese people. Over the years, the United States offices, local media, Office of Editorials have received many expressions of thanks from Vietnamese human rights activists for presentations of U.S. policy carried on VOA. Perhaps the most meaningful to us comes from Dr. Nguyen Van Huy, whose 1990 call for Vietnam's human rights, Vietnam's government to respect basic human rights, so much to inspire this annual event. He wrote, "Thanks to VOA, people know about the international community support for human rights, democracy, and true freedom in our country." USAGM's Office of Editorials takes very seriously our responsibility to tell America's story to the world, to present U.S. policy, as well as bring a message of hope and support from the United States government to those struggling against repression, Vietnam, and around the world.
Is our distinguished guest. This person, to me and to many people in the same my generation, he just like my big brother. We share a lot of same values, same foundation, and with that I would like to introduce retired U.S. Navy Captain Hong Kang, who is the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate in the state of Virginia, retired as a captain, dedicated 25 years in Navy special operation with multiple operational and combat deployments. Please welcome Mr. Hong Kang.
It's a little premature. I won't be the Republican nominee until a month from now. But thank you so much for your vote of confidence. Xin chào quý vị. Thưa mấy bác, cô chú và anh chị, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having me here today. We're here talking about independence, freedom, democracy, civil rights. But let's talk about the true root of the problem. It's communism. Communism is the scourge of the earth. Communism is what destroys countries and lives. Communism is what hates God. Communism is what took away my maternal grandfather, my dad's dad. In the middle of the night, at the age of 13, he had to become the man of the house to take care of his family because of communism. Communism is what took away my maternal grandfather, my mom's dad, who was the magistrate of the city of Hue, and was taken away and was never seen again. Communism is the root of all problems right now. If we get rid of communism, we will bring independence, freedom, democracy, civil rights to the world. The problem is, communism hides by many faces and many names, much like the devil. They go by Marxism, socialism, and today they call themselves equity. Communism is the problem of the world. And the only fight against that, the only bastion of hope in the world is the United States of America. But the problem is they've also infiltrated here. So as a veteran of the United States Navy, I came here and I grabbed onto the American dream and I fought for this country for 25 years in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. But when I looked around and I saw what happened to our country, I knew what was happening right underneath our noses. So one of the things I do in the military is I do threat assessments. I see where the enemy would come in. So if I was the enemy, what would I do? If I was the enemy and I wanted to attack America, I would weaken her first from within. I would sow seeds of discontent and discord so effectively that I wouldn't need a sneak attack in the middle of the night or paraglide into a concert I would distract and confuse so even the most logical actions to protect the nation are labeled as racist or hateful. If I was the enemy, I would use emotion and headlines to manipulate the narrative. If I was the enemy, I would flood our borders with immigrants so tens of thousands of military-aged males can blend in and secure their foothold. If I was the enemy, I would turn the left against the right on social issues. If I was the enemy, I would turn educators against parents and vice versa. If I was the enemy, I would corrupt their language and threaten their livelihood if they spoke out against culture. If I was the enemy, I would normalize crime. If I was the enemy, I would weaken our military and make national pride akin to fascism. If I was the enemy, I would use war in other parts of the world to force spending abroad instead of ensuring a safe haven at home. If I was the enemy, I would exploit a weak economy to continue supply chain issues, increasing our reliance on foreign entities in manufacturing and medication. If I was the enemy, I would use the last 3 years to cause confusion and chaos in Washington. If I was the enemy, I would sow division so deep we no longer recognize right from wrong. And then I would strike. I would hit at your largest cities. And I would turn the young youth against their parents. But the problem is, I would come to places where immigrants from communism, people who escaped communism, congregate. Because we recognize this problem. And we will fight back. Because here, we know what freedom is like and what the price of freedom is. Because here, we are Americans and we will not stand up to communism. That is the scourge of the earth. This is why I'm running for U.S. Senate. Because I've seen this infiltrate our country and I will not allow it to happen. I will fight it from the inside. Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud Americans and we will stand up against communism. Thank you so much.
In Vietnamese history, we have very famous two sisters. So the next person to me and to many people in our group is just like one of the descendants of the two sisters. I would like to introduce Miss Nhân Quyền. She is an attorney and an advocate for the advancement of religious freedom and human rights in Asia. Ms. Nguyen served as a counsel for the Vietnam Tribunal. She served as alternate counsel for the Uyghur Tribunal chaired by Sir Jeffrey Nice. The tribunal concluded that the government of the People's Republic of China had committed genocide against Uyghur people. So, my honor to introduce my big sister, Miss Nhân Quyền.
Thank you, Marvika. I want to start with the illusion of peace without justice and human rights is tyranny. Justice, human rights are prerequisites to true peace. Today we mark the 76th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and commemorates more than 160 million lives lost at the rise of communism. We gather here today to commemorate the 30th May 11th Vietnam Human Rights Day as human rights defenders. We respectfully report to you regarding the Decision 1334. The Vietnamese regime recently promulgated Decision 1334, titled Developing Resources of Vietnamese People Overseas to Serve the Country's Development. Coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we believe that this is a sinister attempt infiltrate and influence the Vietnamese Americans with illegal and malign deeds mimicking the CCP's secret police and transnational repression. 1334 also interferes with the United States national security, expands the Vietnamese Communist Party espionage effort, and extends the CCP's dealings of intellectual properties and trade secrets. The decision unabashedly explained the policy of making the most of the resources of Vietnamese people abroad and identifying overseas Vietnamese resources as an important resource that need to be taken advantage of. The Vietnamese authorities plan to complete the development of database project on Vietnamese people abroad and will infringe on our privacy and likely will use for purposes of transnational repression. Under a one-party rule, Vietnam has no established independent civil society, are all state-run and part of the Fatherland Front. Thus, the decisions plan to build satellite communist and anti-democratic organizations and institutions here in the United States. These agencies, along with the proposed Vietnamese Cultural and Educational Center by the Ministry of Culture, Sport, and Tourism, will exert a malign influence on our community where we can improve the effectiveness of propaganda and provide a ready network for espionage. Decision 1334 is an all-government and from all party committees and authorities at all levels to conduct covert and public actions by Vietnam to influence our political sentiments and political discourse, as well as exploit our resources. This problem is taking new heights under the upgrade of diplomatic relations. Recognize the decision as a new situation. The Vietnam regime needs to respect the law of the United States and immediately put an end to this illegal foreign influence and transnational repression. Thank you.
Next, I would like to introduce Professor Samuel. He has been a keen observer and China expert, particularly in human rights and religious freedom. He is the Vice President of Global Service to the Center for Critiquing the CCP, founder of the Washington Forum and Asian Outreach Director of International Committee for Human Rights and Religious Freedom.
Chairman Fan, respected leader of Vietnam and Asia, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be invited again to give a brief remark on behalf of Falun Gong, Washington, D.C. area. I want to commend Chairman Fan and the leaders to provide this platform of gathering for fighting for freedoms and human rights in Vietnam, China, and ethnic minority groups. I have been a Falun Gong practitioner for 27 years. As you know, the human rights atrocity of tens of millions of Falun Gong have been continuing in Communist China for the past 25 years. CCP's crime includes more than 100 different types of torture methods, sexual abuses, psychiatric treatments, long jail sentences, killings, and even forced organ harvesting. There are more than 80,000 reported cases of inhuman treatments and involve more than 81,000 of individual perpetrators of CCP, which we have recently submitted a list to the FBI, and to other governments in the world. An UN report stated that Falun Gong prisoner of conscience amounts to 2/3, 65%, of victims of alleged torture in China. Authorities estimated about 500,000 Falun Gong practitioners were detained across China at most time in the past. Several millions died from persecution and organ harvesting. Millions of families got broken and faced with hardship. The persecution of Falun Gong is the largest and most brutal human rights atrocity in Chinese history of 5,000 years. The former Assistant Secretary of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, Dr. Bob Destro, he said that the persecution of Falun Gong is an ongoing genocide committed by Chinese Communist Party. One of the highest crimes of CCP is to murder by demand of Falun Gong for their organs for sale. There have been more than 900 Chinese military and civilian hospitals and more than 9,000 surgeons across China conducting forced organ harvesting crime. Collectively, they perform on the average, more than 300 organ harvesting each and every day, more than 100,000. I also want to share with you an encouraging news that in the past 20 years, there's massive grassroots movement in China called Tuidao movement, worthy of your attention, which means hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens dare to step up, say no to CCP, and choose to cut their tie with Communist Party and affiliations. The grassroots withdrawals from CCP continues to grow since 2004 to 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million in 2022, to today, 430 million courageous Chinese cut time on CCP, which is more than the population of our country here. And doing for example, yesterday there are 46,205 courageous Chinese withdrawal in public statements from CCP and affiliations. During these 3-hour events at the Congress, there will be about 6,000 courageous Chinese awaken to their conscience and quit the CCP. The Tuidao movement frees free China into a new society without communism, and later will be a new Vietnam without VCP. CCP has locked down and the whole country and abused the people for COVID-19 pandemic in the past 4 years, which caused its economy to drop to the edge of bankruptcy and caused grave frustrations and protests of Chinese people. So-called white paper revolutions of the youngsters, white hair revolution of old people, and lying down of the Chinese people. Tens of millions of Chinese die of pandemic and man-made secondary disasters. Not to mention about their large lack of freedoms, basic right, medicine, and food. CCP definitely does not have a harmonious society. Rather, constantly facing with its #1 enemy, its own people, 1.3 billion people. China is like an overheated pressure cooker that can easily blow out soon. So in the past 25 years, Falun Gong in China and the free world have embarked a very large
scale of truth clarification against persecution, which reveals the deception, crimes, and the evil nature of CCP. Now, our efforts are understood much better by many more people in China and various government and people around the world. 25 years have passed, but we will still stand strong. But the perpetrators, CCP, are facing with major crisis and coming to collapse. We can now see very well the bright light at the end of the tunnel. So keep up with your good work. A new China without communism, a new Vietnam without communism, and a new world without communism won't be long. Thank you all.
Thank you for your hopeful words. And a fellow Vietnamese, Mr. Đặng Đình Mạnh, a former prisoner of conscience and lawyer in Vietnam. He has defended a number of political cases. In 2018, he provided legal defense for rights advocate Lê Đình Long, as well as peaceful demonstrators arrested during the protests swept in Vietnam in June 2018. Please welcome Mr. Đặng Đình Mạnh.
Ladies and gentlemen, kính thưa vị tập vương, I am a human rights lawyer. I'm from Vietnam. I was granted political asylum by the United States after learning that I was wanted in Vietnam. A few days ago, the Vietnamese government posted a wanted for me again. I show a lot of my client in this little picture. This is my student. Them and me, we are victim and witness of the suppressions of human rights by the Vietnam government. But I look here more than. However, I will not say anything more about the current situations of human rights expressions in Vietnam, because I believe you already have too much information about it. Therefore, I would like to share with you with just one thing which I believe will be effective in improving human rights in Vietnam. We know that Vietnam is looking to the United States government to have support many other economic and defense benefits to enhance Vietnam's position in the region. I think if the United States government trade those benefits with the defense to change policies and laws to help improve human rights in Vietnam. Just one thing, review of unfair criminal laws. Request the Vietnam government to abolish Article 109, 116, 117, 118, and 331 of the Penal Code. Abolishing unjust law is also a measure to resolve the case of political prisoners, because if the law accusing them is annulled, they are no longer criminals, so it is natural to release them. I think require the Vietnam government people, the United States provide economic and benefits. If not, then I fear that the benefits that the United States bring to Vietnam will only have strengthened the power of the Communist Party as well as strengthened the government determination to oppress the people of the country. Thank you.
Save the best for last, our sister community, the Tibet National Congress. Diki Thomasang is the General Secretary of the Tibetan National Congress of New York and New Jersey.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diki. I'm General Secretary of Tibet National Congress, New York, New Jersey. We came from New York all the way at 2 o'clock this morning. As we gather here today to commemorate the 30th Vietnam Human Rights Day, I stand before you as a Tibetan who has never had the privilege to call a country my own, a land scarred by brutalities of oppression. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Wang Pen and U.S. representatives, venerables, and all those gathered in this esteemed assembly. In 1959, China seized control of my ancestral lands. Our homes were invaded, our monasteries desecrated, and our people were subjected to unspeakable atrocities, all under the guise of cultural revolution and development. But let us ask ourselves, was it truly for progress or merely a passage to eternity? Today, the evils of our suffering persist under the iron grip of Xi Jinping's government, relentlessly pursuing the agenda of industrialization at the expense of Tibetan lives and heritage. The construction of Beijing's 13th power station, hydropower project on the Dichu River threatens to obliterate the livelihood of naked villages and ancient monasteries dating back to the 13th century. This is not development. It is destruction in the name of progress. Furthermore, the cultural genocide perpetrated by Xi Jinping's regimes knows no bounds. The forcible separation over 1 million Tibetan children from their families result in most Tibetan students being coerced into boarding schools, either isolating them from their families and communities. Within these institutions, mentoring is emphasized, religious practices banned, and students are subjected to intense political indoctrination. This systematic strategy aims to erase Tibetan identity and cultivate loyalty to China, ultimately serving to suppress dissent against the CCP. The suppression of our religious practices and the criminalization of displaying His Holiness the Dalai Lama's images only exaggerate our anguish. Over 160 Tibetans self-immolated in Tibet. Many of them were under 25. Each one a tragic testament to the egregious violation of human rights committed by the Chinese Communist Party. I stand here today not only as a voice for Tibet, but as a witness to the resilience of my people. The spirit of Chushugantu, a courageous resistance against communist tyranny, through our veins. I pay tribute to the brave souls, including my own grandfathers, who fought valiantly against tyranny without any trainings or guns. Their sacrifices inspired me to continue the fight for justice and freedom. Sadly, Tibetans are not alone in facing such oppression. Our Vietnamese counterparts have endured similar atrocity under their own oppressive regime. Both Tibetan and Vietnamese people have suffered forced displacement, religious persecution, and silencing of dissenting voices. Let us not forget the pride of Tibetan is shared by our Uyghurs, Hong Kong, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Southern Mongolia, and Tibet, and all other brothers and sisters who endure similar atrocity under Chinese communist rule. It is our responsibility as a global citizen to stand against the oppressor who seek to trample upon the rights and dignity of all people. So I want to conclude here with a few words to remind. The fight for human rights isn't merely a battle against individuals. It is a war against the very notion that some are born to rule and others toil under their tyranny. It is to rebel against the arrogance of power and declare that every beating heart deserves dignity, every voice deserves to be heard, and every soul deserves freedom. Let us stand firm, shoulder to shoulder, not just as witnesses, but as a warrior in the struggle against dictators. For in their downfall lies the rise of our collective humanity. Thank you, Pegalo Free Tibet.
Thank you so much. Next, we will have a forum, a panel regarding the role of youth in democracy and human rights. We will have Dr. Annika Silva Linder to provide us with the keynote message, followed with the panelist breakout session. Please welcome Dr. Annika Silva Linder. She is the head of the North America International Institute of Democracy and Electoral Assistance, IDEA. She oversees the international IDA's outreach in the region, its engagement in the Global Democracy Coalition, and its work to support the Summit for Democracy. She is also the international IDA permanent observer in the United Nations, representing the international IDA at the UN General Assembly as the leading voice and advocate.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today and allowing me to speak for this great panel that we formed. I wanted in particular to thank David Tran and the Alliance for the months of this happened. For those of you who don't know, International IDEA, the organization that I represent, is an intergovernmental think-and-do organization founded in 1995 with 35 member states, with a mandate to strengthen and advance democracy worldwide. We do this through knowledge and data production on democratic reforms, capacity building to democratic actors around the world, with a focus on new and emerging democracies, and convening of stakeholders and advocacy on democracy worldwide. We work across a number of different areas: democracy building, for example, electoral integrity, inclusive political participation and representation, democracy assessment, constitution building, climate change and democracy, and technology and democracy. And since 2022, we are proud to have the US as a very engaged observer country in international IDEA. In 2021, the International IDEA and other democracy organizations convened the Global Democracy Coalition. It's a coalition that has now grown to more than 120 democracy organizations from around the world committed to advance and protect democracy globally. And the Alliance for Vietnam's Democracy is an active member, and it's also on the steering group of the GDC. This coalition was formed at a pivotal moment for democracy, a time when alliances and champions for democracy across sectors and countries are desperately needed. Democracy thrives
generation. And our coalition is dedicated to uniting organizations worldwide to build, protect, and advance democratic values. By enriching the Summits for Democracy and other global democracy fora with diverse voices from both civil society and other sectors, we are fostering a global movement that learns from and supports each other in advancing democracy worldwide. The Global Democracy Coalition is all the more important because, as you all know, in recent years we've seen a troubling trend, a steady erosion of democratic norms and institutions on a global scale. Reports from democracy organizations, including my own, all echo the same alarming message. Democracy, the very cornerstone of freedom and fairness, is under threat. We witness the weakening of institutions, restrictions on civil liberties, and increasing authoritarianism all around the world. These existential threats fuel distrust and lead some to turn to authoritarian alternatives. Yet, amidst these challenges, there remains a beacon of hope, a steadfast belief in the fundamental values and principles of democracy. Democracy is not static. It is a living, dynamic, and evolving system of governance, adaptable and resilient to those who stand against it. Yes, the setbacks are real, but so are the successes and progress achieved by democratic champions and institutions worldwide. It is in this spirit that the Global Democracy Coalition is embarking on a new advocacy campaign that we are launching today at the Copenhagen Democracy Summit as we speak. It's convened by a long-standing GDC partner and Champion Alliance of Democracies in collaboration with our partner, Club de Madrid, who is coordinating the GDC campaign with us. And it's a campaign that seeks to shift the narrative surrounding democracy from one of decline to one of resilience, hope, and empowerment. This campaign aims to champion and showcase the value of democracy and foster a sense of democratic optimism. Our mission is clear. Collectively, we will show the invaluable contributions of democratic systems, actors, and institutions to society, how democracy fosters participation, protects rights, and also promotes progress in other areas, such as health, education, the economy, climate change, and even peace building. Our campaign coincides with key multilateral global events focusing on youth in 2024 that we aim to influence and inspire. The third Summit for Democracy, which was held in March, and the United Nations Summit of the Future in September. Today, we launch this campaign with a focus on young people. Young people are the driving force behind the future of democracy, bringing fresh perspectives, energy, and innovative solutions to the table. Their active participation is essential to building resilient, inclusive, and vibrant democracies that can adapt to the challenges of tomorrow. Yet, in democracies, youth are often disengaged from formal politics or shut out of the political realm altogether in authoritarian contexts. We must urgently address both of these challenges. So the objectives of this campaign are threefold. First, the campaign aims to challenge the prevailing negative discourse on democracy by highlighting the value and positive impact of all spheres of life and across different regional contexts. By showcasing successful cases, best practices, democratic innovations, we will demonstrate how democracy delivers for people worldwide. Second, the campaign emphasizes the universal nature of democratic values, while showcasing how democracy is understood, valued, and practiced in different ways around the world, adapting to different regional and cultural contexts while still upholding core universal democratic principles. Third, we will highlight the significance of active citizenship and democratic practices. By emphasizing the role of both individuals in collective action and shaping democratic outcomes, we seek to inspire a sense of responsibility, encourage greater engagement in democratic processes by young people. We will showcase the valuable work of democracy defenders, including activists, civil society organizations, election officials, judges, and other working to protect and promote democracy within democracy and those fighting for democracy inside or outside of authoritarian contexts. April of this year, we aim to engage the 120 plus organizations that are part of the Global Democracy Coalition in their respective networks, leveraging their energy, experiences, and partners to create a massive and collective positive chatter about democracy among youth all around the world. All of us gathered here today, the stakes could not be higher. Democracy's value lies not just in its principles, but in its practice, in how it improves lives, fosters justice, and builds stronger, more resilient societies. So let us move forward together, committed to defending and advancing democracy for the generations to come, starting here and now today. So please join us in celebrating democracy by engaging in this campaign with the hashtag #ThankYouDemocracy. I'd like to introduce a very dear friend and brother, Mr. Manviha, Executive Director, founder of Viện, Principal and Teacher of Taiwan Vietnamese Language School, member of the Executive Board of the Republic of Vietnam Next Generation, member of the Steering Committee of the Alliance for Vietnam's Democracy.
I would like to begin by sharing this. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the United States Declaration of Independence. And later, Ho Chi Minh, in 1945, when they took over Vietnam, he copied that, modified, edited, put it in the so-called Independence of Vietnam. From that day on, the communists of Vietnam start to rule the country with lies after lies. And you see, every people, we have the basic right, the human right. When we still inside our mom, we already have that right. And the human rights, nobody can take it away. Nobody can give that to us. Because the human rights, our rights. From that rights, we build up society. We build up today and the future. I would like to say a little bit in Vietnamese. Because this forum, we would like to dedicate for the Vietnamese human rights in Vietnam. Kính thưa quý vị, đặc biệt là các bạn trẻ tại Việt Nam, nếu các bạn đang theo dõi chương trình ngày hôm nay, xin các bạn hãy hiểu rằng tự do, nhân quyền, dân quyền, tất cả đều là của chúng ta, tất cả đều là thuộc về chúng ta. Không ai có thể lấy đi cái quyền đó từ các bạn, không kẻ nào có thể ban phát quyền đó cho các bạn. Các bạn hãy nhìn lại lịch sử Việt Nam. Chúng tôi không muốn nói về cuộc chiến tranh lịch sử qua, thì các bạn có thể cho rằng chúng tôi có thành kiến. Các bạn hãy xem từ năm 1990, khi mà khối Xô Viết sụp đổ, để cứu vãn tình hình, thì giới cầm quyền tại Việt Nam đã phải nới lỏng sự cai trị, đã phải nới lỏng những cái quyền căn bản là người, chẳng hạn quyền sáng tác, chẳng hạn quyền tư hữu sản xuất. Tất cả các quyền đó bắt đầu được nhà cầm quyền cộng sản nới lỏng ra, thì các bạn thấy điều gì? Rất hiển nhiên, xã hội mà các bạn đang nghe cộng sản hô trương là đổi mới, là sang giàu, bởi vì những cái đổi mới đó, cái mà họ gọi là đổi mới, cái mà họ release quyền đó đưa vào trở lại tay con người thì con người mới phát triển được. Tuy nhiên, just like all other communists, they just try in many different ways to hold you as an animal. They control you to the day or the time that they see the dangerous for them to survive. So they have to do something. Same thing everywhere. We see that from Taipei, we see from Vietnam and all other countries, Hong Kong, we all see that. So don't be fooled. Các bạn đừng để bị lừa, các bạn đừng để bị mất đi các quyền đó để trở thành những con vật, những thứ bị điều khiển bởi nhà cầm quyền cộng sản. Human rights, civil rights, that's the basic foundation to build up the country. As the youth, you inherit the experience, the knowledge from the past. You are luckier because you don't have to pay for the price of those values. Các bạn trẻ, các bạn đang thừa hưởng những cái kiến thức, những cái kinh nghiệm của quá khứ mà thế hệ cha các bạn may mắn hơn, các bạn không phải đổ xương máu, các bạn không phải đổ những mất mát để mà lấy và hiểu được những cái giá trị đó. Those experience you should hold on to that, value that, open up your heart and your mind to study that, and you are lucky because you are the present. You can take technology. Bạn đang có cái may mắn bạn giữ được cái technology của ngày hôm nay để sử dụng với kiến thức của quá khứ làm gì? Chọn ra con đường đi đúng cho tương lai. You choose your own path to the better future for yourself and for the country and for the people. Nobody else, no any political party, region can do that. And if those rights been taken away from you, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. The more you're afraid, if you not get over, you will be controlled forever. That's all. Thank you. Cảm ơn.
About youth, human rights, and democracy. It's inspiring to see the young and multi-generation actively engaged in discussion that promotes the shaping of our democracy. Youth empowerment advances free and fair elections and check and balance, preventing the concentration of power. Both are vital for our healthy democracy. So now we'd like to have a group picture, so if you would please all come stand with us. I'm Lynn. Yes, now we would like to invite all of our speakers and our participants and everyone that has supported us throughout the years. This is our 30th commemoration, and we'd like to have a good picture of everyone. Please come join us. Xin quý vị xin mời mọi quý vị đến để chụp hình chung kỷ niệm 30 năm của Ngày Nhân Quyền cho Việt Nam.
Lên chụp hình. Lên chụp hình. Hả? Đi lên hết. Để 10 năm sau người mấy đứa trẻ tới. Wow. Mới thấy đông thôi. Đó, chị Loan lên đi nhìn cho đông đông. Thôi chụp đi quá. Đi. Chị lên rồi, ông lên gì đó đi, ông đi kìa. Đi.
Dây cái chân đất vậy nè.
Lên chụp hình đi.
Lên hết thì chụp hình đi chứ.
Rồi
thấy từ ghét rồi lên nữa thấy vậy.
thấy em bà.
Dạ đúng rồi, tại vì mình còn quay mà. Chịu thôi.
Anh nói ngồi trước đứng nữa. Nói chưa. Hoa Long, chị cái gì đó xuống, anh Phúc. Ok rồi, được rồi đó. Rồi, dạ. Mình kéo ngồi xuống tí xíu là nó quay.
Mẹ ông cao quá. Like him, man, he's big, man. He stand in front, I can't do nothing. Exactly, yes.
Pick up the bat for the
Vì chúng tôi có đồ ăn ở bên ngoài, xin quý vị đi ngang thì lấy một bình đồ ăn. Quý vị, chúng tôi mời ban tổ chức đứng lại để chụp tấm hình của ban tổ chức. Quý vị nào trong ban tổ chức xin mời lên.
They did the same thing to me.
I got pictures signing.
Send.
Chỉ chưa? Trên đi xong rồi vậy.
cái hình trong cái micro.
Chưa có, đâu có đâu.
Cắt trong cái video đó được không?
Nobody asked me.